So I read a sutta about cultivating mindfulness and concentration, and this a sutta from Anguttara Nikaya sutta number from the book of 8, sutta number 63. It called In Brief. Then a certain monk went to the Blessed One, and on arrival, having bowed down to him, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, he said to the Blessed One, "It would be good if the Blessed One would teach me the Dharma in brief, so that having heard the Dharma from the Blessed One, I might grow alone in seclusion, heedful, ardent, and resolute. But is it in just this way, monk, that some wordless man make a request, but then having been told the Dharma, think they would tag around right behind me?" So this is really it's quite strong. So the monk requests again, "May the Blessed One teach me the Dharma in brief. May the One well gone teach me the Dharma in brief. It may well be that I will understand the Blessed One's words. It may well be that I will become an heir to the Blessed One's words. Then, monk, you should train yourself thus. My mind will be established inwardly, well composed. No evil, unskillful quality, once they have arisen, will remain consuming the mind. That's how you should train yourself. Then you should train yourself thus. Goodwill as my awareness release will be developed, pursued, given a means of transport, given a grounding, steady, consolidated, and well undertaken. That's how you should train yourself. When you have developed this concentration in this way, you should develop this concentration with directed thought and evaluation. You should develop it with no directed thought and a modicum of evaluation. You should develop it with no directed thought and no evaluation. You should develop it accompanied by rapture. You should develop it not accompanied by rapture. You should develop it endowed with a sense of enjoyment. You should develop it endowed with equanimity. So that's about the jhana. But it did not say it's for first jhana, second jhana, but it said all jhanas included in here. When this concentration is thus well developed by you, you should then train yourself thus: compassion as my awareness release, empathetic joy as my awareness release, equanimity as my awareness release will be developed, pursued, giving a means of transport, giving a grounding, steady, consolidated, well undertaken. That's how you should train yourself. When you have developed this concentration in this way, you should develop this concentration with directed thought and evaluation. You should develop it with no directed thought and a modicum of evaluation. You should develop it with no directed thought and no evaluation. You should develop it accompanied by rapture. You should develop it not accompanied by rapture. You should develop it endowed with a sense of enjoyment. You should develop it endowed with equanimity. When this concentration is thus well developed by you, you should then train yourself thus. I will remain focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the word. That's how you should train yourself. When you have developed this concentration in this way, you should develop this concentration with directed thought and evaluation. The same with the before for all the factor of the jhana. You should develop it endowed with equanimity. When this concentration is thus well developed by you, you should train yourself. I will remain focused on feelings in and of themselves, the mind in and of itself, mental qualities in and of themselves, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the word. That's how you should train yourself. When you have developed this concentration in this way, you should develop this concentration with directed thought and evaluation. You should develop it with no directed thought and a modicum of evaluation. You should develop it with no directed thought and no evaluation. You should develop it accompanied by rapture. You should develop it not accompanied by rapture. You should develop it endowed with a sense of enjoyment. You should develop it endowed with equanimity. When this concentration is thus well developed by you, then wherever you go will go in comfort. Wherever you stand, you will stand in comfort. Where you sit, you will sit in comfort. Wherever you lie down, you will lie down in comfort. Then that monk, having been admonished by an admonishment from the Blessed One, got up from his seat and bowed down to the Blessed One, circled around him, keeping the Blessed One to his right side and left. Then, dwelling alone, secluded, heedful, ardent, and resolute, he in no long time reached and remained in the supreme goal of the holy life, for which clansmen rightly go forth from home to homelessness, directly knowing and realizing is for himself. in the here and now. He knew birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done. There is nothing further for the sake of this world. And thus he became another one of the Arahant. So, look like the Buddha know him is ready for the teaching, so he give all this very detailed instruction. People understand? Okay, I just worry.
I like how it includes that, like the nature within the 7 factors. It's like you develop with and without. There's change within the 7 factors. Like they cycle through each other. Kind of like you go from maybe joy, but then then sometimes you're not joyful. You're more strength.
This is not a set in the 7 factor awakening, but more like jhana. In the jhana factor. In the first jhana you have directed thought and evaluation and piti, sukha, and and then the second jhana is without the thought and evaluation, but still have piti, sukha. The third jhana without thought and has sukha, and then the fourth jhana is only have equanimity. But here it did not point. It did not really. How do you say? Because his instruction to the monk to how to should be develop this quality. So it's not a. Like sometimes the Buddha say he's in jhana, first jhana, this and that, but this is just an instruction to the monk. So this look like is all for us too. A certain monk is including us.
It's also nice how he, it's done in other places in the canon too, but often see where he gives that graded instruction to develop the Brahma Viharas before you start going into the Satipatthana. You've got really fully developing the Brahma Viharas and then launching into Satipatthana, setting up the mind. And in all postures, and again emphasized all postures.
Yeah, also, yeah, it's good. Any more comment? And now I go to the 7 factor of enlightenment on a book from a book by Ajahn Thiradhammo, contemplation on the 7 factors of awakening. I choose the factor of equanimity because it's a little bit shorter than other chapters. Every chapter begins with a meditation, but I skip the meditation part. I go to the main part. We will reflect here on equanimity, the 7 factors of awakening. As you may remember from the last chapter, it is one of the factors in the fourth of the concentrated absorptions or jhanas. It is also the fourth of the Brahma Viharas or four divine abidings. So perhaps you can appreciate just how advanced this quality is, since it occurs as the last or most developed in each of these lists of categories. In the fourth absorptions, equanimity is even more involved than happiness. The factor of the third absorption are one-pointedness and an unmitigated well-being. Imagine if you can a kind of unalloyed, timeless, unbound well-being, where all your cells are humming with warmth and goodness. That's the third of the absorptions, a pretty high one. But even that is a little coarse. From there we go on to equanimity, where even this humming of the self is disturbing. Hard to imagine, isn't it? But that's how refined it is. Equanimity, plainly translated, means equal-minded or even-minded, a mental or emotional equilibrium. All of us must be very familiar with the multitudium. It's really hard for me.
Multitudinous.
Huh? Multitudinous ups and downs of our moods. At some point we realize that this emotional roller coaster is not satisfying. And then we may begin to appreciate the value of equanimity. In an everyday context, however, equanimity is not much talked about. We hear more often about people's passion rather than their equanimities. Although some people may think that's how a Buddhist is, wise and economist. They recognize equanimity as something noble and worthy of its aspiration. My experience is that equanimity isn't quite so easy to develop as it appears. I tried to develop it some years ago, but ended up with something really different. During my second year meditating in a forest monastery in North Thailand, I have a lot of thought coming up with which I define as worrying thoughts. I had originally planned to go to Thailand for 1 month, get enlightened and go home. But there I was still working on it 2 years later. 2 years later, with recurring thoughts of whether I should stay. Enlightenment could be right around the corner, or just pack it in, or just pack it in and go back to university. Should I be realistic rather than so idealistic? I didn't have proper visa either, because my entry card was lost when I came to Thailand, and I had to go to the immigration office every 2 weeks, where they would say, "Sorry sir, come back in 2 weeks." So I was really uncertain as to what I was doing there. Am I staying? Am I being kicked out? What is happening? I looked in a meditation manual which said that the antidote for worry was equanimity. So I thought I will just develop equanimity then. And after a while, I fell asleep. Actually, it wasn't even sleep. It was just blanking out. It was unconsciousness, which became a real problem. I tried everything to combat it. I tried to sit at the best time of the day, 5 o'clock, after a cold shower and a cup of coffee. I would sit there, and after an hour, I would open my eyes, and I couldn't know where I had gone. It's okay to sit through a drowsy meditation, but if you are not aware of where you are, it's very worrying. Around that time, I had to go to Bangkok to sort out my visa, and I took the opportunity to go to a meditation monastery in a town on the East Coast. I told the teacher there about this problem, and he replied, "Oh, just look at the sleepiness. Look at the whole process of sleepiness." I thought, what? Isn't that the problem? I just blanked out. How could I see it? However, at this meditation monastery, there is nothing to do except looking at your experience. So after about a month of watching sleepiness, I began to notice that it wasn't actually sleepiness. It was more accurately unconsciousness. In the second month, I noted that before unconsciousness, there was neutral feelings or an emotional numbness. Then in the third month, I noted that before neutral feeling, there was seemingly equanimity, but actually, look at closely, it wasn't equanimity at all. It was indifference. It was actually a turning off from experience. The indifference in this case was turning off from the worry, turning off from the disturbing experience and being indifferent to it. And then there was a numb feeling before there was unconsciousness. So in order to unravel the problem, I have to go back to the source and stop creating indifference. Once I stop developing indifference, the sleepiness stopped, but then all the worry came back. However, at least I was conscious. Sometimes it was more reassuring to be conscious with your worry than to be asleep and so not knowing of it. One of the dangers to trying to develop equanimity directly is that it's really likely to become indifference. True equanimity, though, is even mindfulness with regard to all the difficulty, the worry, the busy mind, or the problem. Thus, equanimity results more often from developing many of the other spiritual qualities first. Developing concentration provides the possibility to calming down some of our usual emotion reaction, habitual interpretation, and self-supporting stories. Through the development of mindfulness, we learn to tune into the condition of mind, including our way of reacting to what we experience and its inherent impermanent nature. Investigation of the Dharma help us to realize some of the background cause of this reaction, which result in some degree of letting go. In this way, we are preparing the ground for a more balanced, economous engagement with reality. Otherwise, we may idealize or
hypothesize.
Idealize or hypothesize some kind of equanimity-like mood, when in fact we are resigning from or tamping down our energized mood, or resorting to an aloof, spiritless, emotional fidgetity. So perhaps you can recognize how refined equanimity is. Now you may ask, well then, how do you develop equanimity? Perhaps it is best to start with the indirect way. The chain on reflection on well-being mentions the 4 Brahmavihara meditation, wishing to be free from affliction, etc., is developing friendly for yourself and for others. Compassion is wishing, may all beings be relieved from all suffering. And empathetic joy is wishing that all beings not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. That is, rejoicing in other people's well-being or good fortune. The last part of the chain has to do with the development of equanimity. That is, we reflect on the principle of moral cause and effect of karma vipaka, that all beings are the owner of their actions and inherit their actions. So we can develop equanimity in stressful, troubling situation by contemplating the principle of cause and effect, action and result. Instead of being angry at something or someone, you could contemplate how their action will have appropriate results. If you want to be righteous about it, you could say to yourself, well, they insulted me, they are going to get insulted too. Not quite equanimity yet, isn't it? However, we are at least contemplating that we are all answerable for our action. The contemplation in that there is no set time for their actions. They are ripen in their own time. We could consider many hypothetical situations. Let's say, for instance, that people insulted you. You may resolve from one of their. It may resolve from one of their habits. They may insult everybody, and one day they may insult the wrong person and get a knuckle sandwich. All those people may not have many friends because they are really insulting. You can say, that's karma vipaka. That's the result of their action. We have to open our mind somewhat to this idea, this universal principle. If we become angry with someone, we usually react in a narrow, personalized way. I'm angry with her because she did this to me. But to develop equanimity, it is more beneficial to consider the bigger picture. We understand that the universal principle of action-result is more all-encompassing than our own personal reaction, and more
ethically
neutral. We are all subject to this principle, not just that person. We are answerable to it too. And if we succumb to anger, we too will experience its result. We may become sick with anger, for instance. If we can contemplate the principle of cause and effect, that all intentional actions will have their result in some way or another, we can step back from the personal to embrace the universal. When we recognize anger arising, we also understand that what we do with that anger is your responsibility. You can maintain the anger if you want, or you can acknowledge it. This is the principle of cause and effect. And if I can take a step back from the personal, the universal will deal with this in the wiser way. We don't have to be so personally involved. We can abide with even-mindedness, contemplating this timeless universal principle. Maybe we won't see the result of someone's action immediately, but in a wiser sense, over time, those results will eventually come about. You need to have a certain amount of trust in this. You can work on equanimity by abiding more in this even-mindedness. Hey, I don't have to react to these ups and downs of life. These things will sort themselves out. How many times have you been upset about something and then, even while you are stewing over it, it just resolved themselves? We learn as we grow older or spiritually wiser that we are all part of a much grander impersonal process, and we become more experienced in how situations often resolve themselves in their own time. Sometimes we don't really need to do anything to sort themselves out. Sometimes we don't really need to do something to sort them out. then we can realize the value and purpose of equanimity, and accept the idea that these situations will even out through the principles of cause and effect. Doesn't that thought make you feel more even-minded, more relaxed and relief, perhaps a little economist? Equanimity is sometimes understood as resignation to or acceptance of fate. However, this is not a very spiritual developed understanding of it. Rather than just accepting our fate, we recognize that we function within a universal causal principle and can change our fate through right action. In the Buddha's teaching, karma which literally means intentional action. We have the power to act within the bound of an ethical cause process. For example, if we do something wrong, it could for example, if we do something wrong, it could give a certain potential result. But we can correct that, we can apologize, we can make amends and change the potential result. So action gives potential result. It is not as deterministic as fate. We can change possible results. We could even cancel some of them out. In fact, we are continually changing results because we are acting continually. Buddhist equanimity is that even-mindedness, that emotional
equilibrium.
Equilibrium, which arises from a wise turning to the true nature of reality. When we understand that all things are constantly changing in harmony with the principle of cause and effect, there is often no need to react personally, no need for irritation or dejection, for taking or rejecting. We have seen how reacting merely springs us into new actions and results, and thus prolongs the cycle of further reacting. Almost there. Oh, still the page. Huh? Almost there. Maybe you'll notice in the meditation exercise I suggest at the beginning of this chapter, just as I have noticed that some form of even-mindedness is present much of the time. However, most of people don't notice it, they don't recognize it, or they don't see it in the right context. They may think it's just boredom. When there are no strong emotion pulling you up and down, up or down, there is a certain even temperedness. And you think, well, this isn't really exciting, isn't it? Usually, we are looking for the more exciting emotion which stand out, and because of this, the background steadiness. The even-mindedness doesn't attract our attention. Sometimes it can be mistaken for dullness of mind, or maybe indifference, but there is often a quality of mental evenness, composure, steadiness there as well. If we give attention to these qualities, perhaps they will begin to stand out a little more in our consciousness. Sometimes when we begin our meditation, we are actually looking for problems, for disturbance, rather than looking at those moments of peace, of quiet, of equanimity. But if we have those moments point out to us in the context of the 7 factors of awakening, we will see the value in that even-mindedness. Perhaps we would give it more emphasis. Because that is what gives us stability. You may sometimes have noticed that if a problem arises in the course of a day which is quite evenly paced, when you have some steadiness, some stability of mind, that problem becomes easier to deal with. This even-mindedness becomes a supportive element for concentration. In the 4th absorption, you have a very stable mind with equanimity, with happiness and joy. There are fluctuations. With happiness and joy, there are fluctuations because they are more active state. With equanimity, however, the stable mind just carry on with or without happiness. It stays even-minded. When living in England, I was invited to teach a class at a local school. While waiting in the vicar's office, I noticed on the wall of a big poster of of an angel with a caption. It's easy to be an angel when nobody ruffles your feathers. Buddhists would say it is easy to be enlightened when nobody stirs up your defilements. That is, it is easy to be equanimous when you are being disturbed, you aren't being disturbed by any difficulty. But there is no challenge in that. Ajahn Chah would call that the equanimity of a water buffalo. When problems begin to occur, thought and emotion start arising. That's a test of your equanimity. When this happens, you remain present. You don't dissociate. You don't run away. You don't become indifferent or numb. You still respond, but with even-mindedness. In the context of the factors of awakening, equanimity follows and is thus supported by concentration. And before that, tranquility. Ultimately, however, perfect equanimity comes from wisdom, from clearly seeing the true nature of things. When one understands that all things are impermanent, always changing, ephemeral. What is there to get excited about? Everything is just changing phenomena, just following process, just flowing process. Ultimately, equanimity is that profound dispassionate stillness where everything manifests, but it's not react to, just silently receive. All these 7 factors of awakening work together, although for different people, some of them may predominate more than others. Someone who worries a lot may need to work on even-mindedness, on not being so caught up with the different states of mind that arise, and we're trying to sort them all out. Even-mindedness is a valuable principle which become a powerful quality supporting
increasingly
deeper insight. That's all. I apologize, it takes so long. I did it. I don't know if you understand or not, but I don't understand much when I'm reading. But it's, if I just listen to it, it's more, it's quite good. People make notice the book. So if you want to read again. Enough for today, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.